session 19, and we continue with Exodus, or Shemot in Hebrew. Exodus 12, verse 37. We ended talking about how the sons of Israel traveled from Ramses to Sukkot. And then we discussed this beautiful history lesson and how it's actually prophecy and how it's actually examples for the rest of humanity all the way up to 2020, where we are today, where we are awaiting things to happen and things to develop, and we are looking for the signs of the end times, and we are looking for the return of our Pesach Lamb as the triumphant king to come and save us out of this Egypt. All right, so the sons of Israel traveled from Ramses to Sukkot, the men being about 600,000 on foot, apart from the little ones, but also apart from the wives. I mean, this is just the males, the men. Now I'm going to jump to Deuteronomy 1, verse 10 and 11. Yahuwah your Elohim has multiplied you, and behold, today you are as the stars of heaven for multitude. And we think back, didn't we discuss in detail how Abraham were promised that his descendants will be like the stars of heaven and like the dust of the earth, and yet he only saw Ishmael and Isaac. He didn't see hundreds and thousands of descendants. He didn't see the fulfillment of this promise. Yet he was one of those men that loved and trusted God enough. And the New Testament confirms that this man, Abraham, he did see the fulfillment because he looked with eyes of faith. He looked into the future, not in a glass ball, but taking the promises of God so serious that he basically saw his descendants. He saw the fulfillment. He left Ur, the land of the Chaldeans. He circumcised his son. He sacrificed to God. He did everything God told him. He was obedient. He loved God. He talked with him. They had relationship. He trusted him enough to leave everything behind and follow just a voice. And what is it that we have today? All we really have is a voice that is reading the Bible to us. And all we have is the Bible. It's black letters on white paper. That's all we really have. Yes, we can look at a butterfly and we can see the hand of God, but just like Abraham, all he had was a voice. All we have is God's voice out of the Bible. And yet Abraham believed. And although it took a little while if you look at time on a linear level, it just took a little time for this prophecy to be fulfilled, because when Israel left Egypt, there were 600,000 men on foot. So let's just think about this. 600,000 men, each one of them, because men is always, I think they count men from about 21, which is the age from where they start counting men to go into war. So of the 600,000 men, let's say, it's probably 100% of them are already married, because they get married quite young in those days. But let's say only 5,000 of them was married. So there were 500,000. So there were 500,000 women. And let's say, and this is not true because they all have lots of children, but let's say each family only had 2 kids. So that is then 1 million kids. So we are looking at, if you count that all together, it's 2.1 million people, all right? And then we're not talking about all the Egyptians that also came out of Egypt with them. And we're also not talking about all the mixed multitude, all the people of the other nations that became slaves in the time of Joseph, when they sold themselves to Egypt for food, blah, blah, blah. But let's say conservatively, that's only maybe, 20,000. It's not much. It's over 2 million people that left Egypt on foot. And Moses says in Deuteronomy that you remember that the covenant, the promise that God made to Abraham was that you will be like the stars of heaven and the dust of the earth. right? And today, as you leave Egypt, you have been multiplied as the stars of heaven. God is trustworthy. But listen to Moses. He's blessing, but it's also a prophecy. Deuteronomy 1 verse 11. But may Yahuwah, the Elohim of your fathers, Abram, Isaac, and Jacob, add. Remember, the name Joseph also means to add. May Yahuwah add to you 1,000 times more than you are. So if we take 2.1 million, and we don't even count the Egyptians and the nations, and we times that with 1,000, what Moses is prophesying and blessing Israel with is that, how do I say this now? 2,100 million. Is it right? 2,100 million. Yeah, so that's what Moses is blessing Israel with. that God will add multitudes and multitudes of people to Israel. And he has done that. I mean, just think about Ruth from the Moabites, and that's only one person that we can quickly think about in the Bible. But I can promise you, over the last 6,000 years, many multitudes of various nations, just like Rahab from Jericho, a Canaanite, any person that wanted to be added, Joseph, Ephraim, to be added to Israel, God accepted. And God made part of Israel. And Israel's own seed also multiplied at the end of the day. And today, multiplied all over the face of the earth. Because this is what the God of the Garden of Eden meant. When he said to Adam and Eve, you are in charge of earth, multiply. And so, I want to sneeze. Hold a second. I apologize. I wanted to sneeze. So God said to Adam and Eve, remember, multiply and be fruitful on the face of the earth. That is what he had in plan and had in sight all the time from the beginning. He says in Genesis 1 verse 28, and Elohim blessed Adam and Chava and said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. So the earth currently is filled with people that are part of Israel, from every tribe, nation, and tongue all over the world. Because aren't we like the dust of the earth, just as God promised Abraham? But think about it a little bit further. It's not only about how much dust we are, but dust is what's left behind when everything else and everyone else burns up. Those who are part of Israel, the bride, the congregation that comes out of Egypt with the blood, gets married at the mountain and follows Joshua into the promised land. That's all prophetic. We've talked about it more than enough. Everyone that's part of Israel will be what is left after everyone else and this whole world system has been burned to ashes in the end time judgment and destruction. Dust is what is currently being trampled on by the world system. But dust remains even long after those who trampled on it has been gone. Are you trampled on today? Are you feeling like people are walking all over you? Can you see how you are not alone? The dust of the earth is people of Israel, part of the congregation of God, scattered like dust. But know one thing, they can trample, and they can continue to trample until the very last day, until God destroys them with the fire that comes from his mouth. And then only the dust will remain. You will remain. The tribe of Judah, the Jewish people, has been trampled on by the Philistines, the physical Egypt and Babylon. They were taken into captivity in Babylon, and they came out, and eventually the Romans totally trampled them. They trampled Yeshua into the dust. They trampled the Jewish people. They They burned up Jerusalem 70 years after Yeshua. They burnt it to the ground, dust. The Nazis, Hitler, they trampled the Jewish people. And the Palestinians, still today, is trampling. Even our government is against Israel and for the Palestinians. Everyone is trampling the Jews like dust. Where are the actual Philistines of those days? Where are the actual Egyptians and actual Babylonians? Where are the Romans of ancient times? Where are the Nazis? Yet the Jewish people are still around. Can you see how the dust that is trampled on remains, even when the people who trampled on it has been gone? The lost tribes of Israel, Joseph, Ephraim, the northern tribes that got scattered all over the world, yet is returning to the God of the Bible currently. But also for the last how many thousands of years they've been trampled on in every communist country, Muslim country, Hindu country, African countries. Yet the more these anti-biblical dictators, antichrist figures try to kill Christians, the more they multiply. Messianic Hebrews are trampled on currently by, unfortunately, both Jew and Christian, both of the houses. Because out of the Jewish house and out of the Christian house, the Hebrews, the Israel, needs to turn back to the olive tree. The Jewish people needs to be grafted back, says Paul. And those who believe in the God of the Bible but needs to return to Him in obedience and blood covenants, they have to be grafted back into the olive tree. But those people that are doing it are trampled on by the Jewish system and the Christian system. You know what I mean. You experience it in your house. And very soon, both Jew, Christian, and Messianic Hebrews will be trampled on by the New World Order. Yet we can see from Scripture and from history over and over and over again that as the dust of the earth and as the seed of Abraham, these believers will be the only thing left behind when everything else is gone. And if you haven't done the Bible study on pre-tribulation rapture, we are missing the rapture, right? Or we are missing the tribulation, right? It is available free of charge on YouTube. Just go to twotreesinthegarden.co.za, click on YouTube, and work through that Bible study. It's hard to be the dust of the earth. It's hard to have to die to yourself in front of friends, family, your system, your church, your culture, your tradition. It's difficult to eventually have to die for your faith. It's hard to have to bear persecution and scoffing and scorn and rejection. But whoever is trampling on you, endure and let your faith grow, because it's proving that you are the dust of the earth, the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And your God, your Messiah, He promises that out of the dust, He is going to raise you up. Isaiah 26 verse 19. Your dead ones shall live. My dead body shall rise up. Awake and sing, O you dust dwellers, for the dew of light is your dew, and the earth shall cast out all the spirits. Come, my people, go into your rooms and shut the doors behind you. Hide for a little moment until the fury passes. Isaiah prophesies of the end-time judgment, and we as the dust will go inside the room just like we had to do in Egypt. And we've got the blood on the doorposts of the room. And God says, go into your room and shut the doors behind you. Go behind the blood. Let the fury passes that will burn everything up. And you, as my son Abraham's dust, you will remain. And you will be risen up. So sing, awake and sing. And keep this in mind when the future starts trampling on you. Exodus 12, verse 37 and 38. The sons of Israel traveled from Ramses to Sukkot, the men being about 600,000 on foot, apart from the little ones, and also a mixed multitude went up with them. Mixed multitude, I love this because this proves that every Tom, Dick, and Harry that ever, from any religion and from any deception and from any sun god worship system, can turn and be part of Israel. And this proves and shows to you it's got nothing to do with being Jewish. Mixed multitude, anyone who wanted to join Israel was welcome. What do you have to do? You have to obey Moses. You have to believe in the blood of the Lamb. And you have to leave Egypt behind. Then you are part of Israel. Just like this mixed multitude, Egyptians and all the slaves from other nations, none of them had Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob's bloodline in them. Yet they all listened to Moses because God spoke through Moses still today. Obey Moses. Believe in the blood of the sacrificial lamb that is on the doorpost to save you from death that's coming, because death has dominion over you as long as you sin, as long as you are disobedient to Moses and to God who talks through Moses in your Bible. You've got Moses. Obey Moses. Repent and return under the blood of the Lamb and leave Egypt. Then you are part of Israel, just like the mixed multitude were. Exodus 12, verse 49. One law shall be for the native and for the visitor and for anyone that is staying with Israel. One law. It is a deception out of the roots of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. It is serpent language to say that the church has one law and the Old Testament church has another. Every tribe, nation, and tongue that gives up the seed of Israel from every corner of the earth, all those people that come, that are like the dust of the earth being gathered in the hand of Messiah, has one law, and that is the law of God. There's only one law, and it's the law of God. Exodus 12, 41, 42. Okay, so we're back at Exodus 12, and it happened from the end of 430 years. It happened on this day. All the armies of Yahuwah went out from the land of Egypt. Do you note that Israel is also called the armies of God? It is a night of celebration to Yahuwah for bringing us out from the land of Egypt. This night is a celebration for all the sons of Israel, for all their generations. Talking about the night of redemption, the night of the blood smeared on the door and the angel of death passing away and Israel being redeemed by the right hand of God, coming out of the sun god antichrist worship system, coming out from under the rule and the reign of an antichrist god, the sun god that is lorded over Pharaoh and the Egyptians and all their occult and all this false worship. And this is the night of celebration for the Hebrew people, leaving all the sun gods behind and leaving Egypt behind and coming away from the slave masters that has been enslaving them for so many years. This night is a celebration to Israel and all their generations. But lots of people have forgotten about Pesach. And that's the sad part. But you are busy with these Bible studies, so that is the good part of it. All right, Joseph was in Egypt about 30 years, and Israel was about 400 years. It's indeed a night to remember, the Passover night. How much incredible significance does it have? Are you starting to love the feast of Yahuwah, especially Pesach, that in every single detail and every single thing that Israel had to do there in Egypt, everything is prophesying and proving the Messiah. Exodus 13, verse 9. And the Pesach shall be a sign to you on your hand, and a memorial between your eyes. Does that sound familiar? The sign of Pesach will be a sign on your hand and your forehead. You know by now where the mark of the beast is going, on your hand and on your forehead. So when you celebrate Pesach, when you come under the blood of the Lamb, when you listen to Moses and you come out of Egypt, then you are wearing Pesach on your hand and on your forehead because you love it, you think it, and you do it. So that the Torah of Yahuwah may be in your mouth. For with a strong hand has Yahuwah brought you up out of Egypt. Only those that wears this sign of God, and we've talked about this before, even Sabbath is a sign on your hand and on your forehead. The whole law of God, Deuteronomy 6, is a sign on your hand and on your forehead, because that is the only thing in this whole world with 8 billion people. That'll be the only thing that will keep people from being deceived to take the mark of the beast. And it shall be a sign on your hand and on your forehead, so that the Torah of Yahuwah may be in your mouth. For with a strong hand, God's strong right hand, Yeshua, his saving right hand, he brought you up out of Egypt. Not only then, but also in our day today. Are you wearing Easter as the mark of God? Easter that has nothing to do with God. Or are you wearing Pesach? Are you coming out of Egypt? Are you on your way to the mountain? Exodus 12:46. It shall be eaten in one house. You shall not carry off the flesh outside from your house, and you shall not break a bone of the Pesach lamb. This is now still talking about this night of celebration, where not even a bone of your Pesach lamb must be broken. Jeremiah 50, verse 17. Israel is a scattered sheep. The lions have driven Israel away. For first, the king of Assyria has devoured Israel. And then came Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, and he has broken the bones of Judah. All right. Our bones, Israel through the king of Assyria being scattered all over the earth, the Jewish people through the king of Babylon being exiled to Babylon and then sent back to Jerusalem, and eventually they were also, their bones broken by the Romans. So the Pesach lamb is the one whose bones are not broken. We, as the sheep, we are also lambs. The whole Bible is about this beautiful shepherd that gathers us in his arms like little lambs. And he calls us and he looks for us and he loves us. We are his scattered sheep. Israel is scattered sheep. I've shown you this over and over again. Here Jeremiah 50 verse 17 says it again. But our bones are broken. We are the dust of the earth. We are trampled on. But not our Messiah. The Pesach lamb, you shall not break a bone of it. Psalm 34 verse 20. He keeps all his bones, so that not one of them is broken. John 19, 32 and 33. Then the soldiers came and broke the leg of the man on the one cross, and then the other man that was crucified with Yeshua. But when they came to Yeshua, when they saw that he was dead already, which was not supposed to happen, normally it takes a long time for these people to die an excruciating death on the cross. But Yeshua went through so much before the crucifixion that he was dead already. So they broke everyone's bones, but they did not break his. We are back in Exodus. We are now starting with chapter 13. Verse 1, and Yahuwah spoke to Moses, saying, Set apart to me every firstborn, everyone that opens the womb. So if you're a virgin and you have your first baby, that baby is to be set apart, to be holy, to be given to God, because that is the one that opens your womb, because your womb is closed. Just like Miriam, Mary's womb, in the Hebrew, the mem, at the end of the word that says virgin, that mem is closed because her womb was still closed while she was pregnant with Yeshua because she was a virgin. Everyone that opens the womb among the sons of Israel, as well as upon the livestock, they shall be mine. Right. So the firstborns were always in God's plan. God always had a plan with the firstborns. The firstborns was always to be set apart, to be holy, because God wanted to use them for his kingdom, and in their attitude and in their personality, God wanted to show himself to his people. But unfortunately, up to here, it's just tragic how all the firstborns never had a heart for God. He wants the firstborn's heart so he can work with them, fulfill their destiny, and ensure his own plans, and that his will be executed through the firstborns, who are the leaders. But unfortunately, you know by now, Cain and Abel, Ishmael and Isaac, Jacob and Esau, Joseph and his brothers, the firstborn physically never had a heart for God. But God's plan always was with the firstborn. So finally, when Israel is redeemed out of Egypt, God says one of his Torah commandments. See, Torah is not so bad. The church want to tell us Torah is bad. Torah is beautiful. Torah says that the firstborn is to be set apart for me. I want the firstborn for me. And it shall be when your son asks you in the future, saying, "What is this? Why are you giving the firstborn to God?" Then you shall say to him, "Because Yahuwah brought us up out from Egypt by the might of his hand, from the house of slavery. And it happened when Pharaoh hardened himself against sending us away, that Yahuwah killed their very firstborn." Remember, just like Pharaoh killed Israel's firstborn when they threw them into the Nile River for the crocodiles, so God killed Pharaoh's firstborn and everyone in the land of Egypt, from the firstborn of men to the firstborn of animals. On account of this my son, I'm sacrificing to Yahuwah every one of the males opening the womb, and I redeem every one of my firstborn sons. So beautiful again how God makes sure that from generation to generation, we don't forget what he has done. We don't forget what Pharaoh has done and will still do. And we celebrate and we carry this sign on our hands and on our foreheads. And we sacrifice. Romans 12 says, sacrifice yourselves to God. And when you have your firstborn son, give him to God. Give him, sacrifice him. Give him to God and say, "God, this is your son. May your personality, your attitude and your Torah be through him and work through him, and may he be a leader in your congregation." And in the Old Testament, when there was still a sacrificial system, because they were priests and they were a tabernacle and they were physical ways in which they could do sacrifices, which we don't have today anymore. They also sacrificed the firstborn of their animals to God. They didn't sacrifice a donkey, because God doesn't accept unkosher sacrifices. So they normally, we're not going to read all that, but they normally redeemed the donkey for money, and then they gave the money to the priests. Beautiful how God takes the firstborn. God intended for the firstborn to be a kingdom of priests to him. He wanted that one son from every house must be a priest to him. He wanted the father and the mother to proudly present their firstborn son to work for God. Regrettably, it was not to be found in the hearts of the fathers or the mothers or the firstborns to be holy and set apart for service to God. Do you remember when the priesthood were given to the Levites? Because the priesthood, the firstborn right, has always been with the firstborns of every one of the tribes of the Hebrews. But do you remember what happened where God decided to give the priesthood to the Levites? Exodus 32, from verse 5 to verse 26. "And Aaron saw, and he built an altar before the golden calf. And Aaron called it and said, 'It's a feast to God tomorrow, a feast to Yahuwah.' Never mind that we are making a golden calf. Never mind that we are calling it Ishtar. Never mind that we are calling it something else and we are bowing before a Christmas tree. It's a feast to God. Let's see what God thought about the feast they made in His honor, pretending to worship Him while they were building an altar to a golden calf. And God spoke to Moses and said, "Go down, for your people are corrupted. They corrupted if they worship me in a way that is not acceptable. They have quickly turned away from the way that I have commanded them. They've made for themselves a calf, they are bowing before it, and they give sacrifice it, and they said, these are the gods of Israel that has brought us up out of Egypt." Do not replace God with a God that you think looks like Him. But nevertheless, verse 26. So Moses stood in the gate of the camp, and he called out, "Who is for Yahuwah?" Because the whole camp was worshipping the false god, calling it Yahuwah. And he said, "Who is for Yahuwah? Come to me." And all the sons of I apologize. All the sons of Levi assembled to Moses. So what happened here? At the foot of the mountain where Israel was supposed to get married to God, where God already said, I want all your firstborn sons to be, given to me, to be set apart for me, because every set apart son will become a priest. But here the whole camp was substituting Torah commandments for their own way of serving God and worshipping God. And God sent Moses down and said, "Go look what the people is doing. They are corrupted." And when Moses came to the camp, the whole camp, remember 2.1 million people? So Moses stands alone. And he comes down, him and Joshua, and he says, "Who is for Yod-Heh Vav-Heh? Who is for God? Who's going to come out of this false worship system, even inside the camp of Israel? You've just come out of freaking Egypt. What are you doing with false worship again? Can't you stay on the commandment route, the holy route, and worship God the way that He says?" And only the Levites, all the sons of Levi, came to Moses. And on that day, the Levites became the priests. And the privilege of becoming a priest was lost by the firstborns of all the families. And it was given over to the Levites. And I'm going to end with this. The Levites, it's priests, but our priests in the nation of Israel, it's not like a little fat old man with a belly like you see in the Roman Catholic Church, and he's so, "Bless you, my son, bless you." No, these priests were given swords, and they killed 3,000 people that were whoring at the foot of the golden calf. And this was the day of Pentecost, Shavuot. And we know, if you've done the Pentecost study that I've placed on YouTube, you know that 3,000 people got saved the first day that Peter, on Shavuot, on Pentecost, had his speech. It is just amazing how our God is working in the lives of His people.